Happy Monday, everyone. My name is Jordan Reyes. This is Travis, and you all know Michael. We call him P. Michael. We all play in a band from Chicago called ONO. I want to begin with the importance that Chicago has had for ONO, but in order to get to that point, we have to take a step further back and look at where Travis and P. Michael came from. P. Michael's a Chicago native. His family was musical, with a cousin who played guitar, Pete Cozy, with Miles Davis, a father who played music, and a Catholic upbringing. P. Michael went to the School of the Art Institute as well, and studied art and music there. Travis also had a musical upbringing, but of a different sort. Travis is from Itawamba County, Mississippi. Travis was born pre-electricity, pre-plumbing, pre-integration. He sang in many choirs and churches growing up from the Southern Christian tradition. And when he was a teenager, he moved to Akron, Ohio. At 17, Travis saw a sign on the wall: join the Navy, see the world. So Travis joined the Navy, and see the world he did. Travis was stationed in many countries around the world and specialized in data communications. A lot of amazing experiences came from the Navy, but a lot of painful ones came from there too. A night in particular is emblazoned in Travis's mind, his Forever Friday night, when his commanding officer, the Officer of Naval Intelligence, attempted to commit sodomy on him. Travis successfully defended himself, but not before the Navy aggressively, brutally interrogated him for days, weeks. To this day, Travis deals with that experience, and it comes across in ONO many times. When he finished his education, or when he finished his time in the Navy, he went back to Akron and used the GI Bill to study at the University of Akron. After that, he split his time as a data communications specialist in Akron and studying poetry performance with Russell Atkins in Cleveland. Travis also became friends with and colleagues with Peter Laffner, who was of the seminal post-punk bands Rocket from the Crypt and Perry Ubu. So Travis was doing arts and studying Kundalini in Cleveland while also keeping this job in Akron. Chicago was never part of the equation. ONO was never part of the equation. Meeting P. Michael was never part of the equation. So Travis, when he was nearly 30 years old, decided to swear off earthly possessions and desires and dedicate his life to Kundalini at an ashram in New Mexico. But on the way, he was waylaid by the Chicago summer. Something about him just trapped him. And soon, within a little bit of time, he had a job at the Northwestern University Law School. It was there that the daughter of a colleague, Kathy Brooks, introduced Travis and P. Michael. Originally, Ono was supposed to be a three-piece. P. Michael would create the noise, Travis would recite poetry and play slide guitar, and Kathy would also do vocals. Except Kathy had a problem with practices. She didn't like to attend them. And so Ono became principally Travis for the words and P. Michael for the noise. There was a pretty strict regiment that the band would go through for practice and preparation, studying ritual and religion, but we'll go through that in a moment. Chicago also thematically has a lot to do with Ono because of the city's history with segregation and race relations, but we'll get into that later on. Travis?
Everybody talking about heaven ain't going there. I said, everybody talking about heaven ain't going there. Heaven. Identity and invisibility. All femaleness and all black maleness depend upon European white males for identity, for reflection, and for definition. Manifest destiny is one symptom. Manifest destiny. Man versus nature. Civilized versus savage. Naming is subjugation. Virginity, subjugation. Ritualistic male and female circumcision. Circumcision and subjugation. God. Subjugation. Violence. All forms of violence. Violence is present in post-colonial Africa as it is in South Chicago. And it is traceable to Euro-colonialism. Poverty equals violence. Hunger is violence. Health, violence. Illiteracy, violence. Gender inequality, violence. Black and white illiteracy, violence. Yet they are politically and economically expedient in U.S. America. Black and white illiteracy. You don't know me. Why not? Black and white illiteracy promotes self-hatred, which is manifest in ideas of whiteness. What is whiteness? It is manifest in ideas of black self-hatred. Biologically, there is no such thing as race. They are politically and economically expedient. Welcome to U.S. America. I am Native American, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Black American. This land is my land. This land is my land. This land is my land. And everybody talking about heaven ain't going there. They're gone. Thomas Jefferson taught us about Negro mental inferiority. He also taught us a lot about female subjugation. From Thomas Jefferson, we received the economies of fear. Fear with us to this very day. Fear. And the economies of fear are defense, safety, security, and ideas of God. God.
Being an ONO is to constantly inspect and confront history, specifically religious history, socio-political history. As I mentioned earlier, both Travis and P. Michael grew up with religion as part of their daily routine. P. Michael is Catholic, Travis, Southern Christian. I am both. My dad's Catholic. My mom is evangelical. She actually started a church up on the North Shore. So Catholicism gives some of the theatrical element, and you have more of the dogma from Christian. Religion was a part of ONO practices growing up. As I mentioned earlier with the regiment, P. Michael would make me, Travis, Rick Graham would go on to play guitar in ONO, attend midnight masses. A lot of the reason that ONO began committing their recordings to tape was because of a serendipitous meeting at a Catholic Mass. You may know the name Al Jorgensen from Ministry. Well, Al produced the first ONO record. And when Pope John Paul II was presiding over Mass in the early 80s in Chicago, they all attended that Mass. And a member of ONO who is still playing, Shannon Rose Riley, who is a professor out in Los Angeles, introduced P. Michael and Travis to Al Jorgensen, and from there they began to record and create what would become Machines That Kill People, the first album that was released on Thermidor Records back in the early 80s by Joe Carducci, who was releasing albums by Black Flag, Minutemen, and others on his influential SST label back in the day. Thermidor also had records by The Birthday Party, SBK, post-punk, and industrial luminaries. Joe continues to write to this day as well. But it was at this Catholic Mass that the group began entertaining to record and be produced by Al Jorgensen. So that's where the original records were coming from, this serendipitous Catholic moment. If you see some of the early music videos, there's also a fixation on the altar and some of the religious themes of Catholic masses and services. ONO was studying ritual. ONO is all about ritual. Ono is about costumes. Now from the historical aspect, we have to take a much deeper dive. Nothing is off limits when it comes to history. Ono is about inspecting the conditions that continue to haunt our existence. That could be Travis's military service from 1963 to 1969. It could be King Leopold carving up Africa from the Belgian Congo. It could be the Caribbean Haitian Revolution. Nothing is off limits. Travis mentioned earlier violence. Violence is of many sorts. There's physical violence, spiritual violence, mental violence, emotional violence. All of these forms of violence make a significant impact on them and are inspected in the lyrics and art of the group. History is constant, even if unwelcome. It's necessary for us to commit history to our lyrics and to our recordings.
From the 15th century until the 19th century, all world economies centered on black slavery. So how do we come to think about racism in post-industrial America? Perhaps we are still in a 19th century Europe. From 1482 until 1961, the Congo played a central point in world history. The Congo is here, Central Africa. King Leopold of Belgium decided that he wanted to own all of it, the entire Central Africa, Congo, which was established in 1390. But Leopold took control of it in the 19th century. Now how, you might ask? Since up until that point, up until the 19th century, Europeans could not withstand the climate of Africa. Malaria. They could not withstand the fierce warriors of Africa. And so, by 1860, you have the repeating rifle, and you have quinine to work against malaria. And by the end of 1860, 365,000 Southern whites owned 390, let us say 4 million African slaves, owned them as property. Reminding ourselves also that until this point it is illegal to teach both women and blacks to read or write or to sign their name. In 1884 to 1885, the Berlin Conference carved up the entire continent of Africa. 14 countries from Europe carved up the entire continent at the Berlin Conference. And not a single African was present. How is it we think about colonialism? How do we think about racism? How do we think about our position within these parameters? We don't have a lot of choices.
This is the only sound you should feel. Man, these kids wear crowns over here and everything is alright.
The area here is
these kids wear crowns over here and everything is alright. This is the only sound.
the blue area here and here and here. France.
This is the only sound you should feel. Man, these kids wear crowns
Britain.
over here and everything is alright. This is the only sound you should feel. Man, these
Napoleon's France then completely subsumes Haiti, or so they thought. From 1791 until 1804, the Haitians fought to the death, alongside, by the way, the Polish who were willing to consider themselves black. That's another issue. But 1791 to 1804, then the entire civilized world, as we knew it then and now, forced Haiti to pay reparations to France for losing. France lost, Haiti won, and Haiti is forced to pay reparations to France of $21 billion for daring to want to be free. How is it we think of racism? And so, 1884 and 1885, the conference divides up the whole of Africa, and by 1913, notice, Africa is European. There is no infrastructure for the Africans. They are dying. Leopold himself murdered 10 to 15 million. The same was repeated throughout the whole of Africa, and the kingdoms that existed burned to the ground, and the people beheaded. Women and children starved to death in the desert. How is it we think of racism in America? America was the first country to allow Leopold to be considered the owner of the Congo. The owner. He owned it personally, not Belgium, but Leopold. In 1906, he passed it to Belgium. But it was Leopold's private property, 37 times the size of Belgium. The most expensive personal property to this day is Leopold's. And so here we are. Women and blacks are not allowed to learn to read until the late 19th century. I congratulate both parties of how far we had to fight. This land is my land. But that's just up until the 19th century. We'll visit the 20th century in a moment.
Cover, motherfucker!
Since ONO began, ONO has released 5 albums and recorded 6. As I said earlier, the first 2 albums came out on Circular Records. The 3 that came after are growth in the last 7 years. ONO reunited in 2008 after being written about by Steve Krakow in the Chicago Reader for his secret history recording albums. The 3 albums that they've released in the intermediary have been on Monogram, which was a label that I co-ran from March 2015 to May 2018. The 6th one, which has been recorded, is titled Red Summer, dealing with the events in 1919, 100 years ago exactly, which began, or I should say were catalyzed in Chicago, not too far from here actually, on the 29th Street beach. Red Summer refers to a period of brutality, lynching, racial riots that were echoed across the United States. A lot of places are talked about with regards to Red Summer, such as Charleston, South Carolina, Chicago, Washington, D.C., but actually a rural county in Elaine, Arkansas had the highest amount of deaths. Chicago had, 15 whites died, 25 African Americans died, 500 people injured, 60% of whom were African American, and 1,000 black families homeless because of houses torched on the south side. Some of the historical context behind that was World War I ended right before. Veterans were not happy with how they were treated when they came back here. And when a black teenager crossed an imaginary border on the 29th Street beach, which unofficially designated which part of the beach was white and which part of the beach was black, he was stoned in the water and drowned. This lit everything off. Red Summer is also particularly important because this was the first time that in number the black population defended themselves physically against violence. And so this became an important civil rights moment as well. The album Red Summer has songs that have been in for a long time, but it is also drawn together by narrative elements, which are created by Michael and Travis, incorporating Travis's words, oftentimes backboned by years and historical events, and C. Michael's noise, contributions from artists like Algiers, Buck Gooder, and hopefully it will come out. We are looking for a label right now and have finished up our mixes and are eager to get it out. But because of the Red Summer thematically, Chicago is important, both logistically and conceptually, for ONO.
You people are all trying to achieve the impossible.
In the
That's exactly
20th
what we've
century,
done.
the scramble for Africa
And you'll all die.
was reimagined
The next
in
generation will write
U.S.
them
America.
too. And the one after them.
Mass incarceration,
And eventually we shall service.
violent crime. We went from plantation in the South and in the North to prison plantation.
Incarcerated for those who ain't make it. Yo,
There is to this day a direct route from high school to prison,
for those who ain't make it.
private prison,
You people are all trying to achieve the impossible. That's exactly what
capital,
we've done. But you'll
capitalism at work. The burden of supremacy. The burden of supremacy. The burden. There's a wonderful book entitled The White Man's Burden. There's another, which I like to read with it, and it's the Renaissance idea of woman. the 17th century, European doctors, lawyers, and the church were wondering, are women human? How are women human? And still, 100 years later, they were wondering, are blacks human? Do they have tails? How can that be? These are European white men who rule and own the world of capitalism, speaking directly for God. And how can any woman therefore say, God, your God is my God? How can I, as a black male, say, my God and your God? Where are God? And in the 20th century, prisons consumed. We have them all around you. But it can work. And if you were on a plantation and you were a slave, a slave female, you are expected to produce at least 5 children for the master. If you are a slave, you may buy your freedom if you produce 10 to 15 children. And now in the 20th century, single-parent households that we are unable from the roots thereof. White and black illiteracy are essential to democratic order. Politically, I'm going to quote from the National Geographic. This should drive the point home. Politically, the U.S. Constitution incorporated a feature that made enslaved Africans political capital to the benefit of southern states. The so-called 3/5 compromise allowed the southern states to count their slaves as 3/5 of a person for purposes of calculating states' representation in the U.S. Congress. Thus, the balance of power between slaveholding and non-slaveholding states turned, in part, on the 3/5 presence of enslaved Africans in the census. Slaveholders were taxed on the same 3/5 principle, and no taxes paid on slaves supported the national treasury. In sum, the slavery system in the United States was a national system that touched the very core of its economic and political life. From the 15th century on, modern capitalism has meant trading, and the black slave has been the capital trader. I gotta roll. You gotta roll. And all of God's children gotta roll my roll. Now when we get to heaven, gonna tie on a robe. We're gonna shout all over God's heaven. 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 Everybody talking about getting on there. Everybody talk about in the name of
in the New Jerusalem, I walk these some streets of gold, in the homeland of the soul. I'm gonna be the horseman white who travels through the
Ono is constantly considering what history has done to us, what that means being in Chicago presently, and how to interact with our surroundings in order to invest into our existence. We're not far from where Red Center began. We are in one of the most segregated cities in the country. And so we have to ask ourselves what to do with violence, how to interfere, how to cause noise within violence, how to interject. Noise, as we talk about it on the definition, is to create interference. Noise can exist in every sense of the word, visually, auditorily. Ono considers noise in the auditory realm. To create noise is necessary for survival and to continue existence.
Mayor! Coca-Cola!
Aerojet Rocketdyne,
Eagles,
United Research,
The Anthropocene!
Lockheed Martin,
Royal Dutch Company,
Northrop,
Babcock and Wilson,
Nestle,
Coca-Cola,
A short list of companies transmitting 5 centuries of violence
Honeywell,
into potential universal catastrophe
Exxon,
via
Orbital ATK,
nuclear delivery in space.
Cisco, Jacobs Engineering, National, Armo Biosciences, Eli Lilly, Dow,
ONO, Jordan, Michael's the leader of the band. I'm Travis. Thank you very much for your indulgence. But we just imparted a few notes as we think about racism in America, as a Native American and a Black American, and on the south side of Chicago. I live a life that you would not believe, you would not want to believe. And I assure you, you lead one too. Would you like to yell at us, scream at us, say bad things. Go ahead, hurt my feelings.
It's too short.
It's usually much longer.
Cut down forever. That's why I was using so many notes so that I didn't get lost in Leopold or lost in the German behaviors or lost in 1884-85 when Africa was completely divided. When we think Africa now, we have no clue. No clue. We only think of Africa in terms of European relationships, and so that's what I studied. And at Northwestern, I spent 10 long years looking at art history, and I'm waiting for all the art history majors and grads to jump up and down now that the political moment is yours. Yes, talk to us, yell. Anything at all that moved you. Yes, ma'am.
Michael, you said you were going to talk to me about Liberia. You was going to mention
Oh,
something.
right, we cut that out. we weren't able to keep that in there. We were talking about the Back to Africa thing when Travis had a part where we talked about how Leopold had his scheme to convince America to be on board by getting the black Africans getting black people out of America and over to Africa, which is where Liberia comes in.
Yeah, actually,
we had that, but we cut it out.
What happened is even more sinister. Leopold assumed complete control simply by convincing the United States Congress that that his takeover of Central Africa was a good thing, was good for the natives there. He would civilize
It's like
them.
missionary work. He was going to make them all,
Civilize them.
Christians and
It's supposed to be
etc.
altruistic.
Yeah.
And the U.S. Congress then thought, an excellent way, or actually I should say all of them, but a significant number, to then bring the blacks in America to Africa. And that idea never really faded. We're not that far away from it now.
They're putting you out of Chicago right now.
In my neighborhood, there are military people who ride up and down the street wondering why those negars are so violent, why they are so, well, ask me and I'll tell you why everyone who knows anything about American history ought to be angry. This land is my land.
They'll talk about that tomorrow when I'm doing races about the anger part.
So tell them about what you know and make them answer.
They'll talk about your anger, but they won't tell you about Liberia. You better ask them about it.
Go for it.
So is this a special performance, or is this like,
This is special.
if we went and saw your show, is this what you would do?
Oh,
No, okay.
no.
It's always different. It's completely
This
different.
is, I mean, everybody's nice and seasoned.
This is cleaned up for y'all.
But I mean, is it very much in like a presentation style?
No.
Well, the shows aren't. This was deliberately, and I used notes, and it was making me crazy. I was using these notes so that I could really make sure that things are more sequential, so that there's an order and flow that we can get into an hour, and also get some uncleanness on my own part in whenever I need it, because I am 73 years old. I am too old to be bored. I don't go anywhere if I can't have some kind of fun.
What you'll get is like a funk orchestra, so you'll get like Sun Ra, it's like a 77-piece act.
Yeah.
With total music and all that mixed in with information in between. You'll get, and then if you go to, well, we do this at like festivals and things. We do a separate part, which is the lecture part. So this is the lecture part, but the live show is different. The live show you can actually,
The sets are all kind of based upon a premise and a narrative.
That P.
and-
Michael creates
Yeah, P.
this
Michael
premise
creates.
and this is just a
based
tiny bit
on
of
words that
equipment.
I've written over the years.
Tons
and
of equipment.
Yeah, oh.
We got like an orchestra, so it's like a synthesizer.
Yeah, it can be anywhere from 3 people to
8.
8, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So when can we see this?
The next show in Chicago, I believe, will be May. I think we're playing with Shoo
17th,
Shoo.
that's the next
We're
one.
opening for Shoo Shoo.
At the Empty Bottle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we go to Quad City.
Play with Shoo
and
Shoo
then
there. And
New York.
How long is the unedited presentation?
it's like 90 minutes. And it's bigger, it's,
Bad
it's
question.
louder and more visuals. And it's dirtier. Much dirtier and louder.
You can take dirty.
Well, in the sense, dirty in the sense that our history, I am very unhappy that historians do not find me in the history books. They do not find most of us in the history books. Not just blacks and women, but white men. You're lost in these history books. And I said, this was to cover the Civil War, which I suggest is still going on, and which I suggest that Southern white men, Northeastern white men, and Northwestern white men to this very day feel as if they have been raped by the U.S. American status quo. So we don't want to get that nasty yet. But that's where I am looking at why we failed the South after the war. I'm from the South. I love the South. But we failed, blacks and whites. As a country, we failed everybody. The infrastructure for white people, there's a reason why those white people want to lynch you. It serves American illiteracy. There is a reason Chicagoans want to lynch me. It serves illiteracy. Only 300 people own capitalism as we know it, and we are not likely to meet any of them. We work for them. I'm very happy to say that I retired. And unexpected, actually. I expected to work forever. But then there was the issue of what do you do when you retire. It took me a very long time to adjust to this idea of getting money from my retirement, all of that, and not going to work every day. But then it was an even longer struggle at even places like Northwestern for good white people to believe and accept that I could read and write just the same words that they do. And look at American law as being a cheaper version of British civil law, which unto itself was never able to discern the new world and women in it, black or white. So racism is at the very root. I suggest that the real revolution will come when we finally decide, when women decide that they're not going to be identified as male this or identified by maleness any longer, and that black men are not going to be identified by white men any longer, then everybody will be forced to look. But sadly, in my fictional story, that's where society as we know it ends, because all language depends upon that kind of segregation. All of our capitalism all forms of it depend upon a slave class. Women have been providing those tools forever and sat back. And then in the 15th century, Africa, and now capitalism must always grow. It needs to overproduce. It needs to overpopulate. So now those companies we mentioned are expanding into space, and that is where a lot of people will have to make some choices. The last clean air on our planet was breathed in 1945. Welcome to the Anthropocene, as we change the whole climate epoch as we know it, just so that we can have the Grand Palais in Paris, the Eiffel Tower in Paris, fabulous monuments that we can visit, and an entire continent where the people are dying. But the money still exists and is flowing out of those into stock exchanges around the world as the people there are dying. The money is still coming out, and the first stock exchange opened in 1602 in the Netherlands. And what did it sell? Yes, slaves. So, that kind of knowledge we can then say to our politicians, you know, we need some change. And I think that people are there. I'm not going to say that all these folks out here are nebulous players. No, not at all. Simply by your existence here at the AIDS Foundation. And there is a relationship between sexually transmitted diseases and colonialism. We'll get to that another time. Maybe we'll come back and talk about that. Because, another question before we start. Don't get me started. Okay, yes. No, I'm stunned.
So when you go down doing racism, now you have more information, because they didn't really get into the depth. So now you can challenge them. Yeah. Because you know more than they do. You know about as much as they do, but they're not talking.
Well, this is where, you know, racism is profoundly embedded. At this point in history, the whole European imperialism carved up everything that was black, chopped off their heads and got rid of them, and all of these. There's nothing African in here anymore. It's all European, and that money is now providing all of the beauties of our society.
Yep. So ask them about that. So see if they can answer that for you.
Thank you very kindly for your indulgence. Okay, I'll put that money there. Thank you.